Roxico told me that AR Foundation got an update and the version 6 has some changes. I told him I was working in a video and it is too late, but here we go. This is a Unity 6 Augmented Reality tutorial. In this case we are going to do multiple images tracking with the latest version of AR Foundation. Also, if you see, once the markers are close enough, we are going to make them react. Let's begin with a brand new project. Just make sure that it is Universal 3D. Now go to Window, Package Manager, and we look for AR Foundation. This is 6.0.4. Then install Google AR Core XR plugin. And finally, let's install Apple AR Kit XR plugin. Now move to the project and we have to delete the main camera scene. Then go to XR and select XR Origin. That contains our AR camera. Now add AR session. This one is important, otherwise you will face a black screen if not added. Now let's go to Edit, Project Settings, and then Graphics, because we want to set up an AR background in our render pipeline. Select the default render pipeline and you see that it highlights its related file. Then we select PC Renderer, then add AR background renderer feature. Let's do the same with mobile renderer. Add AR background renderer feature. Now back to project settings, go to XR plugin management, select Android and then check Google AR Core. Let's do the same in iOS platform and select Apple AR Kit. Go to Apple AR Kit and make sure it is required. Same thing with AR Core, make sure it is required too. Go to Player, set the app name. Now in Android go to Settings and look for the Graphics API, remove Vulkan. Now scroll down until minimum API level and select 24. Check that scripting backend is I2L CPP and make sure the ARM64 is selected. Go to Build Profiles, select Android and switch platform. Check your connected device and hit Build and Run. Create build folder, then Android app build and save. Just say yes, and this is how the app should look like on device. Asks for camera access and that's it. Now for iOS, switch platform, player settings, and check override bundle ID. Set target minimum iOS version higher than 11 and check requires AR Kit support. You can change camera request message if you want. Now go to File, Build Profiles and Build and Run. Select where to save the Xcode project. And now once this is done you will get an error message. So go to Unity Phone, then Signing and Capabilities, automatically manage signing, and select your development team. Now make sure that you will deploy on your device and hit play. And this is how it should look like on your device. Allow camera access and voila! This video is sponsored by me. I stream in Twitch, so go to the link on the description and give me a follow. And also like this video and give me some comments. Thank you. Let's import the files from the Unity package I left in the link in the description below. Drag and import all. Right click, XR and create a reference image library. On XR Origin we need to add the AR Tracked Image Manager component and drag our library to serialized library. Then let's drag the prefab we want to display, Amigo Angry. Now go to Markers folder and on the reference image library, drag the first marker. Specify the real dimensions, on this case 0.1 meters on X. Short disclaimer, AR Foundation recognizes only JPG and PNG images. If your image is JPG-E, TIFF or another format, you have to convert it before importing it into the project. Now go to File, Build and Run to verify that in fact the marker is tracked. In XOrigin, we remove our Amigo Angry because fun is about to start. Create scripts folder and then create a monobehavior script named Multiple Images Tracking Manager. Add it to XOrigin as a new component and open it up. This script will basically manage which prefabs are visible when a marker is recognized. And also this sets prefabs in the detected marker's coordinates. Let's start with the prefabs that we want to spawn. So serialized, and we add a list of game objects named prefabs to spawn, which are the prefabs that will appear. Now let's add a reference to our AR tracked image manager. Add the dictionary that contains the instances of the prefabs and the name to show or hide, named AR objects. Now let's initialize and reference the elements of our system. So tracked image manager is equals to the component we have in this very XOrigin. If the reference is null, then do nothing else. Finally, we initialize AR objects dictionary. Now we initialize and organize the elements in our scene. Private void setup scene elements. Let's create a for each that goes through the list prefabs to spawn, and for each get 1. Now, we have an AR object that is the instance of the current prefab, and we set it on position 0 with the default orientation. Then assign to AR object the name of the current prefab. We hide the AR object because we want it to be visible only when the marker is tracked. And finally, we add this AR object to the dictionary, and its name is the key to find it. Now on star, we call our setup scene elements. Let's look for tracked image manager events trackables changed and add a listener that calls on image track changed. Create onDestroy method to remove the listener, so copy and paste this and change this by remove listener. Now let's create the private function on image track changed and add as an input arguments AR trackables changed event args. Let's create a for each loop that goes through each argument type added, and we get it tracked image. Copy and paste this twice, change this by updated, and here by removed. Now let's create the private method update tracked image that receives AR tracked image. This function, depending on the marker, will make visible or invisible the prefabs instantiated previously. Call update tracked image here and pass tracked image. Copy and paste in update and removed. But here we received a pairs of data, so add value here. Now let's ask first if tracked image is null, then do nothing else. Then if tracking state of the tracked image is limited or null, then AR objects and square parentheses pass the name of the reference detected image and deactivate the related prefab, then do nothing else. Okay, if none of the conditions are met, it is because there is a good tracking. So in AR objects, we make visible the prefab belonging to the tracked image name, set the position equals to the marker's position, and define the rotation as the marker's rotation. Go back to Unity and in reference image library, add the other marker. In the scene, create a new cube that will be named exactly as the marker it belongs to. Copy the name and paste it in the cube. Let's set the cube dimension values as the ones as the markers, so 0.1 meters in X, Y, and Z. Drag the cube into Prefabs folder. Now copy the name of marker 2 and create a new cube. Paste the name. Click here to change all these values at once to 0.1. Drag the cube into Prefabs folder. Okay, we can now delete them from the scene. Now in XOrigin, open Prefabs to spawn and drag the prefabs. Marker 1, marker 2. Okay, now open marker 1 prefab by double-clicking. Drag Amigo Angry and make it bigger until it gets the cube dimensions. Select the prefab root and disable Mesh Renderer to hide the mesh. And check also Box Collider. Now if we see, Amigo Angry has an animator component. Go to Animations folder, Amigo Animations, right-click and create an animator controller, Amigo Animator Controller. Select Amigo Angry and drag the controller into the controller slot. Now double-click in Animator Controller and drag first Amigo Angry animation. Double click and check loop time so the animation restarts automatically. Then drag Amigo jumping animation without loop time. Drag and drop Amigo dancing animation and enable loop time. In parameters, create a new trigger called Start Interaction. Select Amigo Angry animation, right-click and make a transition to connect to Amigo jumping animation. Select the connection and unmark has exit time, so the animation gets interrupted if the change is triggered. Now adding connections the trigger. Create a new trigger named Go to Idle. Select Amigo jumping animation and make a transition to Amigo Angry animation. Disable has exit time. In conditions, let's add Go to Idle. Make a new transition from Amigo jumping animation to Amigo dancing animation. And make another one to Amigo Angry animation. Here uncheck has exit time and put the condition Go to Idle. In Amigo Angry, add a rigid body and mark is kinematic to ignore physics. Add a box collider with dimensions 0.3 in X, Y, and Z. Check its trigger and save. In Marker 2, drag Combi assets from Prefabs folder. Let's adjust the size of the cubes without moving it. Deactivate in Marker 2 Mesh Renderer and Box Collider. Select Combi assets. In Animations folder, check Combi Animations. Create inside an animator controller named Car Animation Controller. Drag the controller to controller slot. Drag now Combi Idle Animation. Check loop time. Drag Combi Reacting Animation. Double click and mark loop time. Create a new trigger parameter named Go to Idle and make a transition to Combi Idle Animation. And check has exit time and add the condition. Create another trigger parameter named Start Interaction and make a transition to Combi Reacting Animation. Deactivate has exit time and add the condition Start Interaction. Now add rigid body and mark is kinematic. Add a box collider. Set the size to 0.3 in X, Y, and Z. Check its trigger and save. Now in Unity, on scripts create AR interactable object and open it up. This is an abstract class AR objects will inherit from to define their base behavior, just in case you want to have different AR object types. In summary, this contains a list of interactables this is interacting with. Also, this contains an AR object state. This also gets the other AR interactable object that enters or exits our trigger. This also defines what happens when the object gets disabled. And finally, this updates its own state. Let's begin with creating a list of AR interactable objects named interactables. Then create a protected enum state with the states idle and active. Create an instance of the state AR object's state and initialize it as idle. Create onTriggerEnter and onTriggerExit. On onTriggerEnter, if the other .tryGet component of the type AR interactable object, outVar interactable. Then call the method addInteractable and pass interactable. Copy that. On onTriggerExit, paste it, but this time we call removeInteractable and pass interactable. Now let's create the protected method addInteractable that receives AR interactable object. Here we add interactable to interactables list. Create a protected function virtual set state that receives a state. An AR object state gets equals to state. Call state and pass state.active because it means that there is an interactable interacting with me. Now, create a protected function removeInteractable that also receives an AR interactable object. Here we remove interactable from interactables list. So if the list gets empty, then call setState and pass idle. Now, what happens when this object gets disabled? Create onDisable. Here, create a for each loop that goes through interactables list, and for each one, We say, please remove me from your list. At the end, we empty our list and we set this state as idle. Okay, now save. Now let's create a new script called car for our combi. Here, instead of inheriting from monoBehavior, inherit from AR interactable object. Delete all this, create a reference to our animator, create onEnable, and here, animator is equals to the component we have in our car. Create protected override void setState to extend this function, receives a state. Let's call base.setState and pass state, just to do first what it does in AR interactable object. And here we extend the function with a switch to validate and define what to do next with state. So when state is idle, for now break. Now when state is active, for now break. When it is idle, invoke the animator trigger go to idle. When it is active, call the animator trigger start interaction. Open now Marker 2 Prefab, and in combi assets, let's add our script car. And save. Let's create a new script called character and open it up. Delete all these lines, here inherit from AR interactable object 2, create a reference to our animator, create also a private serialized for the renderer because we want to adjust the material animation depending on the cactus state. On onEnable, let's assign to animator reference the one that comes with our cactus. Now override our function setState that receives a state. Let's add base.setState to do first what setState does in AR interactable object, and then create a switch to define what to do with the new state. So when state is active, break. The state is idle, break. Now when state is active, call the animator trigger start interaction. When state is idle, call the trigger go to idle. And finally, if renderer is null, do nothing else. Otherwise, look for the material 0 and enable keyword emission to access the material parameter emission. Then on material 0, set color emission color, new color with 0.5F in RBG and 0.1F in alpha. Now copy this and paste it in idle. But here change the values to 0 so our cactus is not luminous when it is not interacting. Go to marker 1 and in Amigo Angry, let's add our script character. Now expand Amigo Angry and drag Amigo to renderer slot. Now save. Now let's hit play. In the scene we see our prefabs disabled because there are no detected markers. Enable marker 1 manually. Now when enable marker 2, we can see how they interact. If I move them away, so they exit their trigger colliders, they get idle state. If I move them closer, the state becomes active and they start dancing, and cactus gets luminous. Okay, now let's verify that markers have specified the real sizes. And now File, Build and Run. And this is what you should see. There is marker tracking for one or more images. When both are close to each other, state becomes active, and we see in summary 2 behaviors. You can add more markers and more models with more actions. Don't forget to tag me on your socials when you upload your project. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and watch this other video.